How's it going, everybody? My name is Antonio, and I'm on the barbecue today with Michael Wood, the CEO of Reyna Gold, which is a gold exploration company with assets in Mexico that I'm going to say a few words on here in a second. Who's not here with me today, though, is your financial advisor. As you might know, this is going to be just a conversation, one that's general and impersonal in nature, and one that will include no financial nor investment advice whatsoever. And there will be no invitations to buy or sell absolutely anything in this talk. However, what we will see and hear a lot of in this conversation are forward-looking statements. These are nothing more than basically guesses, and basing investment decisions on them can and will lead to loss of capital, and I'm speaking out of experience here. So I also need you to understand that the mineral exploration industry is just a very high risk industry to employ capital in, and you will need a whole lot more research before doing that. So when I say we're not your financial advisors and do more research, I'm not just saying that. I'm absolutely serious about it. That all said, Reyna Gold, as I said, company with gold assets in Mexico. It's an almost $4 million market cap company right now with 67 million shares outstanding, and so that makes it about a 5-cent stock at the time of recording of this video. Company has 4 exploration properties, more specifically, not too far off from each other, located in the northwestern part of Mexico. La Gloria, their flagship asset, is located in the Mojave-Sonora Megashear, which is why that's important. Why I'm saying this is because this is it's a major geological feature in the southern western United States and well, northwestern Mexico, then in this case. And it's this geological feature is characterized by a large scale strike slip fault zone, which for the non-geos among us, this should basically be good news, because those type of faults are known to create let's call them favorable conditions for mineral deposits. And given that there are over 40 million ounces of gold that have been discovered on this trend, which also hosts a few gold mines, by the way, that geological thesis does make sense here. The company has already drilled some holes and has some assays back that have confirmed mineralization, with the best hitting 59 meters of about 1.5 grams of gold from surface. So they're drilling shallow holes right now. And there is a 5,500 meter of drilling currently ongoing there under the phase 2 drill program that started in March of this year. And I believe they're drilling 4 targets, as well as there's a geophysical IP survey that has been planned. Part of that drilling has recently been announced, and it has been completed, more than half actually. And we'll hopefully be discussing that a little bit in here. But that's not it. As I told you, Reyna has 3 other projects in earlier stages, of which we have the El Duranzo, which is south from Gloria, and it's located in a historic mine district. And this is an almost 25,000 hectares of land, so it's pretty big. Then you have La Centala, which is another one of their projects. It is south from El Durango. Duranzo, pardon me, it's a smaller land package. It's a little less than 5,000 hectares, but that property was put together by Dr. Peter Maga, who as you might have heard about from Mag Silver, who visited the project, I guess, saw the historical artisanal mining works and probably thought it'd be cool to test it. So they're hoping to do that. He also, though, visited and put together another part of another one of the projects of Reyna Gold here, which is the Don Porfirio project, which is the 4th property that they have, and it's an almost it's the smallest one of the 4. It's but not small. It's 4,000 hectares land package, and this project has not yet been explored using modern mining methods. So it is well, they're hoping to test that as well. I'm hoping we can hear more about it moving on. Of course, none of this matters unless it can be properly explored. And Mexico has been making notable moves politically these last few years. So I'm hoping we'll also be discussing that. And I'm also hoping that it's time for me to shut up now and give the word to the CEO here. So, Michael, thank you for investing your time in me today.
No, thanks for having me, Antonio. Great to be here.
Pleasure is all mine, of course. I'm looking forward to doing this because I don't know. I'm attracted to low market cap companies for one way or another. That's just how my brain works. What did I miss in the overview, though, of the company here? What else do you want to add?
No, great. It was a great overview, Antonio, and I think it's a great time to be getting out the story to your network. We are unfortunately in quite a depressed situation with that share price, and we are in the middle of a pretty substantial drill program. So we just put out the first batch of results last week, and we should have hopefully quite a few batches coming. And we can go through it in more detail. But what we're trying to define at a Gloria property is multiple economic deposits on one property. We're really doing what we call district scale exploration. So we're not just targeting one potential project. We've targeted, like you touched on, four main top projects within a project virtually that we want to show are economic mineral deposits in their own right. That's what we're focused on, particularly with this phase of drilling we're going through. And this is very rare in mineral exploration. And we're very fortunate to be in a position where we have a property that has that potential in, like you say, a very rich zone. The Mojave-Sonora Megashear, has grown to over 40 million ounces of gold pretty quickly. Really, since the signing of NAFTA in 1995, major exploration started place. It's home to Mexico's biggest gold mine, La Herradura, owned and operated by Fresnillo, one of the biggest gold mines in the world. And when there's one big deposit on the trend, there's usually others, and there's multiple million ounce deposits on the trend, and that's what we're hoping to discover and add to with our Gloria project.
Mexican government has to allow you to do that, though, and they have been an interesting political jurisdiction. Many newsletter writers have even been advising against speculating on companies who don't have licenses to operate there now, but you don't seem too worried right now. How come?
Look, I think there's definitely been affecting our share price, and the current president AMLO, pushed through some mining legislation in some pretty unsavory way, holding a hearing of the Senate without calling the opposition. And our legal counsel in Mexico, one of the top mining lawyers in Mexico, says to us he thinks 50-50 that the whole thing gets thrown out. Right. So, from our perspective, Mexico is one of the biggest mining countries in the world. It's a top 10 gold, top 10 copper. It's the number one producer of silver. It employs directly about 500,000 people in the mining industry with very well-paying jobs. So, I think if you actually look, even within AMLO's own party, Morena, there's a lot of pushback against this mining law. Two of the main candidates that are running to replace AMLO are openly saying it's wrong and running on the fact that it should be changed. And then he's also starting to lose ground, or the Morena party is also starting to lose ground to other parties. And this is definitely a factor. So, it is what it is. It's definitely not been good for us as a company. I think a lot of people have sold our shares on the back of this. But again, it presents an opportunity for people that are new to the story and starting to look at the company at this point in time. And we have our claims. We've also filed what's called an amparo, which is basically an injunction. And what it means is that you can't retrospectively change the law on our mining claims. And now every major mining company has done this in Mexico. We've done it across our properties for Reyna Gold and Reyna Silver. And we expect to win. You can't, it's in the Mexican constitution, you can't retrospectively change the law. So we would still have 50-year term. We would not be affected by all the other parts of this new legislation. But we're still waiting to hear. It'll be interesting to see how all these emparos play out that have been filed in Mexico.
Can you get a little bit more specific there on, and just walk me through what you have project per project? La Gloria obviously being the most important one. What do you have in terms of permits there? What are you allowed to do, and for how long on each one of those projects?
Yeah, so we have an exploration permit in place, and it's 50 years with a renewal for 50 years, which is the current setup. We don't have a production permit, so we would have to seek a mining permit to go into production. I think one thing that's been in the news a lot is the issues around open pit mining. Where we are, we don't see any issues. We're about 15 kilometers from the city of Caborca, really in the desert. There's no local community. We believe we have water access on the site. There's aquifers in the area. We believe we can easily drill in that aquifer and get the water access. So, they're the kind of being the main worries. If you're close to a town, the potential issues with the community not being happy with the mine, we don't have that. And we believe we have access to water. There is actually a water source for the Chanate mine, which was run by Alamos Gold. It's 1.5 kilometers south of our property. Worst case, we can just use that same water source, or even potentially that mine. So, it's we don't see issues there on those kind of two main concerns. There's been a lot bandied around. I mean, people have been saying that open pit mining has been outlawed in Mexico. That's just incorrect. It was never outlawed, and it has not been outlawed in this updated legislation. So, unfortunately, when you're in a weak position, people kind of try and make you weaker. And I think that's happened with Mexico mining. But geologically, it's an amazing jurisdiction. The workers are great. You're not seeing cost increases like you're seeing in a lot of parts of the world. We've seen dramatic cost increases in the US and Canada and Australia. You're not seeing that in Mexico. So there's pros and cons to everything. And I think, if you understand that how big mining is to Mexico, you'll understand that it's not just going to, evaporate. So we're quite comfortable there. It's not been a pleasant situation over particularly the last 6 months. But I think AMLO the election is next June 2024. So we're getting to that point already where, that hopefully we get transition. And like we touched on at the beginning, there's quite a good chance that the whole legislation is thrown out, like everything, not just parts, that literally the whole bill is thrown out. And I think if people want to look at things, AMLO did a very similar thing, basically 12 months previously around electricity production. And he pushed through very unconstitutionally a bill to basically make more of the electricity production produced by the state, nationalizing more and more of the electricity production. And that was the whole bill was thrown out after about 6 months. So we'll see what happens here. It's definitely something investors should be aware of and should keep an eye on. But we believe that if you company you invested in is aware, like we have, and we filed an Empower to protect our constitutional rights in Mexico, we're in a good situation. And we've got good people, local people on the ground that are very comfortable operating in this jurisdiction, good legal counsel. So all these kind of things are quite important as well when looking at companies.
You're saying that there might be a transition next year. What if there isn't? What does that mean for you specifically? You have this 50-year license to operate, and you're saying constitutionally there's nothing that can happen to that license. But it wouldn't be the first time that we see something happen against the Constitution either, if something happened.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And we'll see what the results is of our injunction, our Empower. We don't have that yet. But, worst case, if our Empower gets thrown out and the mining law is constitutionally completely changed, then we will revert to a 30-year tenure with a 30-year extension one time, and then potentially a 30-year extension the second time. So, it's still a long time. And I think for an explorer like ourselves, I've seen quite a lot in the media saying that the hardest hit are the grassroots explorers. Now, look, we most likely will never operate the Gloria as a mine. Our intention is to make a discovery and sell it to a miner such as Fresnillo or Newmont or somebody like that who is very comfortable operating in Mexico. So, and then we'll let them deal with the legislation down the line. I think, the kind of life of Reyna Gold is probably in the region of kind of 3 to 5 years, at which point, hopefully we've made the discovery and we sell the property and we move on. So it's definitely something that's topical and is definitely affecting share prices of Mexican companies, even the likes of Fresnillo. If you look at the Fresnillo share price, it's definitely been affected. Grupo Mexico, Southern Copper. So it's going to be interesting how it plays out, but there's definitely backlash internally, even within AMLO's own party, against what's taken place, and a lot of questions on how this is actually beneficial to Mexico.
Well, so yeah, I don't mind dropping share prices, as weird as that may sound. I am young. I can afford waiting for a couple of years, but I do mind them if they're fundamentally supported. So if the business is fundamentally affected, and the way I see it, you basically have two things that are most important for your business here. You have to be able to operate, you have to be able to drill to make a discovery. And the second part is you have to be able to find a buyer for potentially what you find there. And so both of those things depend, in my opinion, on the government. You have to be able to drill. You're saying you don't have a problem drilling right now. You're doing that. So that part of the business taken care of. What about finding money, exit liquidity, basically, for yourself? Because I don't know how investments are in Mexico this year and whether they're going back or not. But you're probably you have a direct line to Mag Silver, who's probably also giving you more insights. Well, what insights can you give me? How are the majors looking at Mexico and potentially doing business there right now?
Yeah, and I think what the majors all want are big deposits, and if we can make a discovery in the region of 3 to 5 million ounces of gold, the majors are going to have a look at that because it's very rare, and particularly in a low-cost jurisdiction like Mexico. Where we are in the Megashear, it's oxidized gold. Oxide gold is increasingly rare as well. So if we can make a major discovery of oxide gold, I think a lot of people will look at it because they know they can make a lot of money from such a deposit. Now, anywhere you go, you have to take a risk. You look at like deposits in all parts of the world, you have to assess the company risk. So it's all part of the equation. But the key metric is this going to be an economic deposit for us as a company? And if they believe that is, then I think they'll be willing to buy, at a discounted price to the gold in the ground. So, that's kind of the value proposition, and that's kind of our focus, to make a discovery of multi-million ounces of gold. And we can touch on, I mean, look, we're finding some very interesting copper parts of the property as well. So, that's something we're also looking in, and maybe also brings us in the angle of actual copper producers, such as Grupo Mexico, one of the biggest copper producers in the world. It's probably the most obvious. But again, everybody wants copper. You even see Newmont coming out last week saying they're increasingly looking for copper deals. Now they're merging with Newcrest. Barrick have been very open that they want to have more copper in their portfolio. So, a copper gold property is really in vogue, and I think most of the major mining companies will have a look. And then it's just a question, whether any pull the trigger. But one beautiful thing as well for a deposit like ours is the capex is not hundreds of millions of dollars. We're looking at very simple heap leach processing, depending on the scale. But to just give some context, the closest mine to La Gloria is Chanate. That was built in 2009 by a group called Capital Gold, was later sold to Alamos Gold, who mined it for most of the 12-year mine life. That cost $36 million to build that mine to produce over 100,000 ounces a year of gold. So, let's say in today's money, $40-50 million. It's quite digestible for even a junior. If we have to pivot, that's not our intention. Our intention is to make a discovery and sell it. But we don't have to come up with like $500 million of capex, which for most junior companies is not possible. If it's $50 to $100 million on a reasonable discovery, that's quite digestible. So that's also a nice optionality to know if you can't get the right kind of sale price from the likes of a Fresnillo, a Newmont, and Alamos, whoever might be interested, that you could go down the production route, change the company, bring in a whole new roster of mining engineers, etc. But again, there's a lot of them in Mexico, very competent. And what we find as well, Antonio, is that a lot of the Mexicans love to work for the Canadian companies. A lot of them cut their teeth at likes of Fresnillo or Grupo Mexico, but they know they get paid more money and basically better work conditions working for the foreign companies. So that's also a nice thing to know, operating in Mexico.
You're mentioning a discount to the in situ value of what you potentially might find there. What are some examples of transactions that have happened? How much are majors, or how much have majors historically paid per ounce in the ground?
In Mexico, that's a good question, Antonio. That you've caught me off guard. I'm not sure off the top of my head. I'd have to check. But I don't know off the top of my head the recent transactions close to us. But a lot of the big majors are operating there. Newmont, Barrick don't. I mean, whether Barrick would be interested in going in. Fresnillo are the biggest guys, particularly where we operate. Alamos Gold have had a lot of success in Mexico. You have companies like Goldcorp now, obviously merged multiple times, that were very active back in the day. So it's a good question, Antonio. I don't know off the top of my head the recent kind of transaction value, but let's say in the region of $100 to $200 an ounce gold. So it's very accretive for a major if they can be buying gold in the ground at that. They're going to get a high valuation on their balance sheet. So, but these juniors, we don't have an official resource, but we know there's deposits on the ground. I mean, we're trading at peanuts. We're trading not much above cash. So, you can get vast re-ratings, even if we make a $500,000 to $1 million ounce discovery, and it's trading at like $10 or $20 an ounce. That's still a substantial re-rating to where we're at today.
Sure. Big ifs, of course. We don't know anything of that yet. So the people listening, this is the type of forward-looking statements that I was referring to at the beginning. You're talking 1 million ounce deposit. You're talking about $100 an ounce in the ground. So that's about $100 million takeout. And so if it's a 3 million, that'd be a 300 million. That's sort of the range that I was looking for. Obviously, you never know how these things might go. It's up for debate. Gold might be $5,000, or if Peter Schiff was in the room, $10,000 by then. But so you never know. But that's just the thing that I was sort of range that I was looking for. What about something else that me as a European, never been to Mexico? The only thing that I know about Mexico is maybe from Breaking Bad. What about the cartels? Is that a real thing? Is there security concerns, or are there actions that you're taking to manage any risks regarding the cartels?
Yeah, the cartels exist, and they have quite a bit of influence. but like in all parts of the world, it varies. So it's not homogeneous across Mexico. So where we are on one of the major mining trends, the cartels are they're not involved in mining at all. The governor of Sonora, the state governor, is a mining guy. Sonora is the biggest mining state in Mexico, and I think you do need to be a bit selective when you go to Mexico where you go, because the influence of organized crime varies from state to state, from city to city. So in an area like on the Megashear, Fresnillo have 3 operating mines. They really control the area. There's a lot of copper as well in the area, not far away. Actually, there's a porphyry only 16 kilometers north of us, so also quite close. So the cartels exist. There is activity, but they don't interfere with the mining sector. It's something that they've never done business in. It's quite a complex industry that's not part of their business network, and so we're quite comfortable operating the way we operate. And all our geologists are local guys. They know who the local people are. They know what to do and not how to irritate people. And I think if you go in and you bring in a lot of foreign geologists, that can cause social unrest, right, in all parts of the world. Just going back to the ESG perspective, people like to see the local communities are benefiting. So, we've hired all local Mexican geologists in our team. If I rocked up with a team of 5 British and Australian geologists, we might start to get a few issues. But as long as they see that you're supporting the local communities, they're quite happy.
Okay. Well, that's a good point. That's a good point on the jurisdiction. I like the things that we've touched upon. Thank you for that overview, Michael. We also touched a little bit upon the type of deposit that you're looking for, but maybe we can go a little bit more in depth on that. It's basically copper gold, orogenic copper gold deposit in the millions of ounces that you're looking for. So a really big boy. Is that correct?
Yeah, and no, this is definitely a great topic, Antonio. And actually, we're looking for multiple deposits, and we have different mineral systems on the property due to the vastness. So, we got 24,000 hectares, 240 square kilometers. So, look, our Republicana zone is traditional orogenic gold. We've got orogenic quartz veining. We've got disseminated gold around those quartz veining in a very soft, broken up volcanic host rock. Right, so that's a typical orogenic type deposit, which you get on the trend. The Fresnillo deposits, all the way down to San Francisco, which was the Goldcorp mine back in the day, are these kind of deposits. Now, what we're also finding, which really fascinates us, is more intrusive style deposits. So over in our western target area, where we just got back initial 2 holes, we've got these big quartz veins outcropping at surface, but in a diorite, completely different kind of host rock, diorite, which is more related to intrusive events. And they're big. They're like 4 or 5 meter wide veins. It's not like an orogenic vein. An orogenic vein is kind of, maybe anywhere from kind of 0.5 meter to 2 or 3 meters, right? So you get these big veins outcropping of substance, and from the nature of the outcropping that there's been a lot of force pushing these veins up. So what fascinated from these initial results was we hit a lot of molybdenum, we hit zinc, we hit bismuth, a lot of geochemical indicators that we're close to a porphyry event. Right, and we know we always knew there's a porphyry 16 kilometers just north of us, owned by Peñoles, the parent of Fresnillo, and it's a JV with I forget exactly who it is, Cagalco, I think, the Chilean copper miner. But anyway, the predominant is Peñoles, the parent of Fresnillo, and then 50 kilometers directly south from us as well, there's another porphyry which was Peñoles' first ever mine in Sonora. They mined it out a long time ago, called La Union. So we know there's also a porphyry belt running through here. So if we're very fortunate, we've actually got an intersection of the orogenic gold and the porphyry belt. So that's what we're kind of hoping for. So look, it's very interesting with the start of drilling in Western. We've identified it. So also just going back to the geophysics, we've done a lot of geophysics on the property. These initial holes kind of show us like we're on the edge, right? What we hit was not a porphyry, but good proximity to one. So now we're going back and doing more field work. There's a big magnetic high just north of this. So the team's on the ground right now doing field work and preparing for some initial holes to go into that big magnetic high, which now kind of we look at and it's pretty glaring, could well be a porphyry center. So we want to test that kind of ASAP. And then in our Las Carmelitas zone, which is east of Western and south of La Republicana, we have some very high-grade copper samples at surface, so up to 9.5% copper, 7, 4, 3. We have I think 40 odd samples above 2% of copper, surface samples, and they're in a conglomerate bed. So, conglomerate again is a great system for hosting mineralization. You've got a lot of smashed up rocks all broken up, and when you get hydrothermal activity coming up into conglomerate, which we have evidence of, you can get mineralization spread out and disseminated through the conglomerate. So, for example, about 40% of gold ever miners can come from conglomerate systems. Most of the gold from South Africa is conglomerate hosted gold. So what we're finding here is we've got a very big conglomerate bed. We've already mapped it for over 2.6 kilometers of length, 2 kilometers of width. That's being confirmed by the IP geophysics. And what we're finding as well is the depth. The first drill hole we did into the conglomerate was 258 meters deep. The whole drill hole was conglomerate, which is extremely deep, a lot deeper than we expected. So, look, very interested to see what's been happening below this conglomerate. And as the geological team explained to me, there's heavy silification within the conglomerate, and this is what's referred to as a silica cap. So this can preserve any kind of erosion from the mineralization below it. But we know the mineralization has come up, but we're definitely very fascinated to see what's below this conglomerate as well. And so, that's a completely different style of mineralization again to what we're talking about with the orogenic gold. So, we're blessed that we've got multiple different styles of mineralization. It's quite fascinating from a geological perspective to have all these different styles, on the same property, but quite spread apart. We're talking 5-6 kilometers from each of these targets to each other. So, substantial difference in location, but all on a property.
So it is indeed, because at the beginning you said it's almost like multiple projects within one property, and that kind of sounded strange to me because it's normally different targets. But when there's different targets, they're oftentimes drilled with the same geological thesis, and you have different theses for every one of those targets, which technically, I guess, makes it a different project altogether. So you have more than 4 projects, I guess. Interesting. Okay, it almost sounds too obvious, though. How come nobody thought about that before? How come? I mean, how did you get this on your hands? Either a $4 million company. Why is this project not owned by anybody, with more money?
Yeah, so it was owned by a junior in the mid 2000s, or the core part, and in our main zone area, that's where they focus. And they identified a hydrothermal breccia in a shear zone. We have an internal block model based on their work of about 42,000 ounces of gold at about a 0.7 grade. So, a reasonable small deposit, but nothing of substance. And, I've spoke to some of the locals, some of the bigger companies, and they're like, it's an interesting area, but, nobody's ever really managed to piece anything together. That was the most they could piece together. And then it was all broken up. Jorge and Ariel, our VP of exploration, had to do multiple deals to put the land package together. So, only the main zone was really being explored. Western, it's really our discovery. Nobody had done any work over in that part of the property. Las Carmelitas is completely our discovery. This is very covered as well. So, nobody knew about this Las Carmelitas system at all. The old exploration at La Republicana, there was a mine. So, one of the beauties of Mexico, our old historic mine. So one of the beauties of Mexico is you use these old workings as an exploration guide. So we knew at La Republicana there was an old mine of reasonable size. There's some big adits going in. So, we knew that there must have been decent mineralization here in this part of the zone, but nobody had done modern day exploration there again. So, we went in and we got some good initial results. So, yeah, it's a case where people had really not looked in detail. And if you look at the company that did the work back in the mid 2000s, they never really had any access to capital. I think, they did like 1,000 meters here, 2,000 meters there. I've looked, they're kind of raising $200,000 at a time. So they were really bootstrapping it. So we've gone in, it's on a big trend. We've put together a big land package. We believe there were multiple deposits on the property when we took it on, just due to the location and also some showings at surface. And really, we've gone in and done substantial exploration. So, I think that this kind of thing takes time as well. And I think, unfortunately, that's been a hindrance to our share price, that I think some of the initial investors kind of have thrown in the towel and think, we thought you'd have made a major discovery by now. But we've been working on the property. We went public in January 2022 and really ramped up exploration at that point once we had full access to the IPO proceeds. So now we've been working on the property just over a year and a half, and really very happy and excited with the geological advancements we've made. And really at the end of this phase 2 drilling, I want to show people, look, La Republicana has the potential to be a deposit. Western does, Las Carmelitas does, main zone does, and this is actually only on a third of the whole property, Antonio, as well. So we've honed all these 4 targets in 8,000 hectares, 80 square kilometers. So, we've honed in, and that's what we're aiming to show by the end of this phase 2. And then, recapitalize the company and then go do more expensive drilling and start to work towards actually putting some formal resources around these deposits.
How much you've probably spent just about as much money on the company even before you went public to counting now. You've probably spent more on it than what the market cap is. All right, so about $3.5–4 million. You probably spent about that much on the project so far.
Yeah, no, a lot more than that.
Okay.
We spent $7 to $8 million, I think, since going public. I mean, we raised $10.5 million, Antonio, in our IPO. So yeah, we've spent a good $7 million now on the property, and before that as well. Putting the claims together, we raised $3 million as a private company to put all the properties together. So yeah, we've spent the best part of $10 million now on the property, so substantially in advance of our market cap.
What is sort of the timeline year per year then? Because you were talking about 3 to 5 year plan, or at least hope that you're having there. So what are you doing then in 2024 and then 2025 and I guess 2026? It's super far out, I know, but what is sort of your gut feeling or your main thought telling you?
Yeah. So yeah, exactly. Show the potential in this phase, then recapitalize and go back and start to work towards a formal resource on at least one of these deposits. Depending on the capital that's available, and the kind of strategy we see. And I like the beauty we can do, Antonio, as well is once we get to that point and we've delineated a mineral system, we can just go in with an RC rig. So out Chanate, the closest mine to us, once Capital Gold had delineated the deposit, they just RC'd it. Most of the drilling was RC infill, right? Because it's oxidized, it's very easy to drill, right? So RC drilling, we were considering it actually for Las Carmelitas. Now we'll see what these initial kind of diamond holes are, but you're kind of talking $50–$60 a meter in Mexico. So you can go in with not that much capital, and if you're doing 50–100 meter holes of RC, you can bash out kind of 3 to 5 holes a day. So you can move forward pretty quick on actually putting a resource together on a deposit for not crazy capital. So look, what we want to show is the potential, and then we'll prioritize if we don't have enough access to capital, which kind of these deposits we want to move forward to show, resource and then economic studies to show it's economic over the course of 24. And then hopefully by the 24, we're showing to people that, yeah, we have a discovery of substance that can be an economic deposit and put into production. And then at that point, I think even then, we start to engage strategics to see whether there's a potential takeout, or we JV to advance the property to that kind of final stage. So 25, bigger drill program, hopefully start to do some studies. And then, yeah, hopefully kind of that point, we're looking at a point where, there's some people seriously thinking about, buying the asset offers.
Can you get there without drilling deeper holes though? Because you're currently mostly drilling shallow holes, really. Because you're saying 5 holes a day. What is it? 3 holes a day? Those are shallow holes, right? So do you plan on going any deeper after this program?
And it kind of depends what we find, Antonio. Like from say Las Carmelitas, for example, if we find dissemination through this conglomerate bed of reasonable grade consistently spread around it, then if you have 2.6 kilometers, 2 kilometers of this conglomerate, even if it's 100 meters thick on average, that's a massive deposit. You don't need to go deep. But yeah, from a geological perspective, there's that intrigue of, okay, what is it there? But if we start to get to a point where, okay, we have to assess the best use of the capital. So if we feel like we can build up a good deposit in Las Carmelitas of size, just shallow in that conglomerate, we'll prioritize that, because that's really moving forward to the stage of getting a deposit that can be a mine. In Las Carmelitas, that's like one angle. Western, we think we'll probably need to go deeper. So maybe that's kind of not become the priority. La Republicana, again, we think we can get a lot of mineralization close to surface. We've got the disseminated system that we know of. We've got a lot of this host rock across this zone. So again, we think we can build up a lot of bulk mineralization close to surface. And that's the really the way we see it is the best return on our capital. The investment of doing shallow holes and building up a resource close to surface is most likely the best return on capital, rather than going and drilling kind of 500 meter holes to see. But there's that intrigue, and if you do some deep holes into this porphyry target, then yeah, okay, let's see what the grade is like at the porphyry. If the porphyry is like a 0.2 or 0.3 grade at 500 meters, it's not economic. Then we'll move on. So it's nice to have the optionality, and it's really kind of a wait and see, Antonio. Let's see what these results are like. But it's easy to do bulk mining across the surface. You go in, you basically put it on you scoop it up, you put it on a leach pad, and it's a very simplistic mining process and very low cost as well. So I think there'll be a lot of interested parties if we can show big deposits close to the surface.
Right. Just a side note here, maybe do some of your neighbors also have a gravity circuit, or is it really just heap leaching? That's it.
Well, our Chanate was just heap leaching. La Herradura, which is the biggest gold mine in Mexico, that has more because I think just the scale of it, they have they want to get high recovery grades, so they have a lot more processing take place there. But it depends really on the scale, and then what kind of investment you want to be making, right? If you've got 5-10 million ounce deposit, then I think it makes sense to invest in a better processing facility. But if you're in the region of kind of, let's say, 500,000 to 2 million ounces, then maybe you just keep the capex a lot lower. You get lower recoveries, and you just keep it as heap leach.
Okay, well, that's a good side note. But so the current drill program, to go back to that, that's really mostly to show that there is something there that's worth exploring further. That's it.
Yeah. So we showed at surface, we showed big mineralization footprints at surface in Las Carmelitas and Western, and now we want to show with drilling that there's mineralization at depth as well. And same at La Republicana. We only put 2 drill holes in last year. Now with these initial holes, we're already showing we're successfully stepping out into this zone, which showed by surface sampling was mineralized. And showing reasonable depth in these holes. So that's what we want to show. We've shown people this potential scale at surface. Now we want to back that up with some drilling, and then look to then come back, recapitalize the company, and then go and exactly focus on moving one or all of these deposits forward towards resource and economic studies.
Okay. You have been getting high levels of mercury though in some of those drill holes, if I'm not mistaken. I guess not. I mean, the way I learned it, that would be a penalty material together with arsenic and other stuff. Are you seeing any more of those toxic materials? I guess, or like, how do you look at it?
Yeah, so this is in our Las Carmelitas zone. We've got high levels of mercury, arsenic, barium, strontium. So this is what you call an enrichment zone, though, Antonio. And this is a very kind of unique blend of chemicals that you get in hot spring style deposits. So a lot of the big deposits in Nevada are these hot spring style deposits. So when we found these high levels of mercury, a lot of people think mercury is scary, but actually geologically we're really excited, because to have that combination close to surface is a good indication that you've got a bonanza grade below. So what you find is you're getting the mercury at surface. But once the mercury drops out, the mercury gets up to the surface. But once you get deeper, the mercury drops out, then the bonanza grade mineralization comes through. The mercury basically strips out the gold. Where we found mercury, we don't find gold. And when we're finding gold, there's no mercury. So it's a very interesting geological discovery actually to find out in Mexico. And a lot of geologists believe that like you touched on at the beginning, that these major gold trends from the West Coast extend down into Mexico. They're actually all one system. So to be finding very similar geological or geochemical footprints that you find in the major deposits at Nevada is quite exciting from our perspective. And it's nothing to worry about from a geological extraction perspective. It won't be rampant throughout the system, and we know that already. We know it's just kind of a surface element close to surface.
What about arsenic? Is that something you're going to be testing for as well?
We find a similar thing. We have reasonable levels of arsenic there, I believe. I have to double check off the top of my head. But we know it's oxidized gold in La Republicana. We haven't drilled at Las Carmelitas yet, so we just started drilling there, and we're definitely interested to see what we're finding. But we believe it's the same. We believe it's a similar setup once we start drilling into that. So we don't expect any major kind of issues with kind of these elements coming in from a recovery process.
Okay, and then that's Gloria specifically, La Republicana. But you also have those other three projects that not the four targets they have, but just the other three projects that are more south. They're basically more south each one from one another, but they're also south from Gloria. What's the plan there? Just sit on them for now?
Yeah, I mean, like, we just got a hands full at La Gloria, and very excited what we found geologically, and this is only a third of the property that we're working in. So once it's good to have the projects, but you also then sort of need to put different geological. The cost goes up once you start exploring multiple projects. So from a just pure preserving capital and managing capital, definitely during like pretty turbulent times, we've really just focused on La Gloria. But all the properties are great. I mean, we are excited about them all. It's great to have them. And we get offered a lot of properties now in Mexico because a lot of people are wary of the location. So, I can tell you, me and Jorge get a lot of inbound inquiries about, are we interested in certain properties? So I think, the fact we have a good footprint in country and we're comfortable, it kind of differentiates us from some other explorers. And I mean, let's see. I mean, if we keep having the success at La Gloria that we expect, that'll be the focus. But, I mean, one strategy, like we touched on, is we advance La Gloria over the next couple of years, sell that, and then we move on to something else. So it's great. I mean, Durazno, similar size land package to La Gloria, 24,000 hectares in a very rich zone as well, very similar. So right over on the Sierra Madre Gold and Silver Belt, very close to Mulatos and a few other big deposits there. Some good geochemical signatures at surface. So that's something, second kind of priority project to get to. But for right now, we have our hands full at La Gloria.
How much money are you spending on Gloria this year?
Well, we'll see exactly how much we drill, but we want to do 5,500 meters, if not more. So that by the point we finish this drilling, Antonio, we're going to be down to well under sub 2 million. And we don't want to get too total on the coppers. So, what we want to do is make sure that we get through this drill program, and then we'll look to recapitalize the company before year end. Hopefully, on the back of some great results and a substantially higher share price, so we don't have these issues with dilution. We've been very fortunate that we haven't raised money since our IPO in January 22. A lot of people have had to go to the capital markets. We haven't had to. So, we've been quite prudent with our cash over particularly the last 12 months. I'll have to check exactly what our cash balance was at the beginning of the year, Antonio. I'm off the top of my head, I'm not clear exactly where we're at the beginning of the year and like the projections to be the end of the year. But in our own internal strategy, we want to complete this drill program and then go back to the capital market before year end to recapitalize the company. So ballpark, I would say, Antonio, and I need to check this. In the region of kind of $5 million. Is the estimated spend over the course of 2023.
Okay, right. So what are you paying, by the way, there per meter drilling? Is it 300-ish, something like that?
Oh no, $118 a meter, 118.
Mexico, that's Mexico for you.
Yeah, that's one of the benefits. There's a lot of negatives brought up, but operating is cheap, and like we touched on, RC is half of that. So it's a low cost jurisdiction to operate as an explorer and as a producer. And I think one thing that investors sometimes forget about is that there's so much talk about grade in exploration, and it is important, but it's not the be all and end all. Infrastructure is important, processing techniques are important, labor costs are important. If you actually look at the main costs of the miners, the main costs are labor and energy. So also energy in Mexico is very competitive. So, I think you want to look at a lot more things than just purely grade. And you need to look at scale. People can get just a bit carried away with grade and not really understand the scalability of that grade. And unfortunately, the industry can kind of mislead people on the scalability of the grade. So, scale is actually a lot more valuable than grade. To be finding these big systems is increasingly rare because most of them are being discovered by now. Yeah. So, when you go into a zone like we have, which is relatively underexplored, definitely in modern times, it does open up that potential for the scale, which is a big factor in cost.
But at $100-something a meter, though, this drill program is going to cost a little over $500,000. You're saying you're spending about 5 million. Where's the rest of the money going?
Well, our geological team is not cheap. We have a lot of good geologists. So, just that we have 5 main geos on the property. And then, you have, there's just the pure geo contract, Antonio, as well. Then you have, the machinery, the SA is $30 a meter. So if you look at the all-in cost, 118 is the drill contractor. Basically, the all-in cost of the drilling is direct is about 150. But then if you look at the geological team, it's quite expensive. We did basically $500,000 of IP. So it all kind of mounts up, Antonio. Unfortunately, when you're running these companies, the machinery is also you have bulldozers, etc. to move to create roads and create drill pads. So it all kind of adds up. Yeah, ballpark total. It's like G&A is around $1.5 million. Marketing budget, etc. Listings, salaries, and then in the region of kind of 3 to 3.5 exploration is kind of the full budget for the year.
Okay, $1.5 million G&A. What does that go for? I mean, you don't have an office, I don't assume, because you live in Asia yourself. So that's mostly paychecks, then I assume, of management, and then what else?
Yeah, exploration staff as well. A lot of staff. Marketing, you have to constantly be marketing these companies, unfortunately. So yeah, it's and then listings, costs, insurances, travel. So yeah, it all adds up, unfortunately, running these companies, Antonio. So yeah, it's in that ballpark. I to be honest, I haven't checked off the top of my head, Antonio, before we sat down. I can send you the numbers afterwards, but yeah, it's in that ballpark.
I mean, ballpark is okay. Ballpark is okay. I think $1.5 million is well, it's not cheap, but it's not out of the ordinary either. So there's nothing to necessarily hang my hat on there. But it's no, I'm just thinking towards next year, because if you want to do more next year than what you're doing this year, and this year you're spending about 5 million, you're gonna need, if you end the year sub 2 million, then you're gonna need $3-4 million of raised capital next year. Well, that's about where your market cap is right now. So where is that? I mean, you're hoping the market cap is going to be someplace else, hopefully higher if you have good results this year. I don't know if you can get the market excited unless it's exceptional results, but we'll see where the market goes, of course. But where's that money coming from? Who's raising that money for you? Where are you raising it from? Is it brokered, non-brokered? What are you looking at?
Yeah, and a lot of it is results pending, Antonio. And let's see where we're at on the back of these results. And what we hope is that we have multiple meaningful holes, a higher share price, a lot of people are interested in giving us capital. And, whether it's brokered or non-brokered, we'll have to assess. Whether we try and bring in strategic is, one angle. Like you say, it's not a cheap business, exploration. Maybe, we look at kind of a JV structure. We'll have to assess like what capital is available, but that's kind of mine and Jorge's job. So we'll on the back of these results, we'll look out in our different options, and we'll do our best to get the capital we want to do the exploration work next year. And worst case, we have to scale down the program, right? I think there's also that trade off. While sentiment is bad in Mexico, maybe we just have to scale down the program until sentiment is better. But really, pending results. That's what we want to do. We want to get out these results. Hopefully, we're at a better price. But like you said, if we're still at $3 or $4 million market cap, we're not going to go and raise $3 or $4 million. We're going to raise 1 or 2. So then we'll have to scale back things and assess our options. Definitely, strategic is a good option if we get to that point. Trying to get a strategic to come in and maybe JV an asset or something like that. But we'll see what kind of optionality we have. But yeah, that's kind of the headache that we have in this market, right? When your share price gets so depressed, yeah, exactly. Getting the access to the capital. But like we touched on at the start, people coming in at 5 or 10 cents know they can make a potentially a great return. So it's just a trade-off between the dilution and that access to capital.
Because you also have some warrants that expire this year, probably out of the money. I guess you never know. Yeah. It'd be fun if they were in the money by then, but something, I don't know 65 how the
cents, yeah, the 65 cents. So we'd have to have a big rally. But this can happen in the sector, right? Even on a few holes.
Yeah. Sure, you're making me hopeful, and I don't think how healthy that is. I don't know how healthy that is to me, but no, you're right. And those are more than forward-looking statements, and it is results spending and all these things. It is so important for me to talk to you about these things because I want to know that you have a plan and that you have a backup plan and a backup to the backup plan because a lot of things go wrong in this industry. That's where I'm coming from. You're mentioning, strategic potentially, and it's earlier we mentioned that this is sort of a sister company to Reyna Silver, if you want, which is a not technically, but more or less a daughter company of Mag Silver, which is Dr. Magaz's I don't know, love child. So it's sort of a one big happy family here. But how much of your company is owned by sort of strategic shareholders? I mean, I know that 21% is split between you and the rest of the management. I think you have some 2.5%, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's then you have 21% total is owned by the management, and then about half of that is owned by retail. I'm just thinking, is that mostly spread out around the globe, or is it concentrated with people who you know personally that you would call strategic shareholders, but are not necessarily institutions or insiders?
Yeah, it's we don't have any like strategic like mining companies or anything as shareholders like Reyna Silver. So that's definitely something we I think we like to achieve, and I think gives also investors comfort if a strategic comes in that they have a level of due diligence being conducted. So yeah, it's quite spread out now, Antonio. Since we traded, obviously where the stock is when you go public. But once you've been trading for a year and a half, you really it's not easy to keep track of it. It's all put into different accounts. So we know we have contact with a number of to the main shareholders that support us from the start that are still supportive. And again, I think we'll be there for capital when it comes to it. But yeah, it's unfortunately we've had a pretty tough 12 months. If you look at our share price, we were 30-cent stock in April 2022. We got annihilated. From April and May, went down to 12, and we've never got back above 20 cents, and now we're at 5. So it's and we've traded quite good volume as well. If you actually look at our volume compared to a lot of juniors, we traded quite a lot of shares. So yeah, it gets quite spread out. I think we're quite pleased that we still have the tight share structure. We haven't had to dilute, and that's kind of our main aim, to get to a point where we can keep the structure tight going forward, but have the access to capital. That's the trade-off, right? That we need to manage over the remainder of 2023.
If someone's listening from a different industry, they might find it funny because I think your average volume is 120,000 shares over the last couple of months. In that range, maybe a little bit lower now. So that's what, $5,000-$6,000 at these. I mean, that's not in other sectors that would not be high volume, but in some of these stocks that I've been following, they trade like 50 shares a day, 10 cents, so stuff like that. So yeah. It is true. Well, but don't you see this maybe as part of the management and you having the vision and understanding this company better than anybody else? I mean, why wouldn't you be participating in the open market? And do you maybe have any plans or price target that you would like to be buying at?
Yeah. Hey, I would love to buy shares right now, Antonio, but I can't because we're drilling and I have a drill report every day. Right. I would be loving to buy shares at 5 cents. I've bought, I think, 330,000 shares on the open market since we started trading, but I can't right now. Yeah, we're all blacked out. So until we stop drilling, we can't participate. But yeah, I'll participate in the next financing. And if the share price is still down here when we finish drilling, I'll buy some on the open market. So Jorge's bought, Alex Langer has bought on the open market. We've been active on the open market because we believe it's a good investment. And unfortunately, in the shares we got downward momentum, and we haven't had the catalyst for the upward momentum yet. So I think it's a good time to be accumulating shares, and I openly would if I could, but I'm blacked out until the drill program's over.
Yeah, I think you were a buyer at what, 15 cents. So you might have even been a buyer at higher prices too in the open market. What do you think?
My average is 28 cents in the open market. Okay. My 330,000 shares. Yeah. So I bought some at a lower price, but I bought quite a few around 30 cents, kind of April 22. But anyway, it's good. I mean, and I think the concept to tell you is the founder shares were at 5 cents. So for investors out there, there's the same prices. If you can pick up stock at 5 cents, that's what the founder shares were issued at. So, it's like you're getting in as a, if you look at these new companies, the founder shares are often 5 cents. Now you can buy on the open market at 5 cents. Yeah, it's if people are happy with the story, understand it, then I think it's a good opportunity to accumulate some shares.
I don't think you're doing this right, Michael, because founder shares are supposed to be 1/10 or 100th of a penny these days. I don't know if you heard, that's all the rage. So you're doing founder shares at 5 cents. It's interesting. I didn't realize that. But no, the fact that, your average is 28 cents is sort of telling me that you're either making this work in the next 3 years, or I might have to get my couch ready for you to come and crash for a couple of days. So hopefully you do. You do get that working. This is not your only job, though. If I'm not mistaken, you're involved obviously in multiple companies. You have your own company out there in Asia, but you're also involved in Reyna Silver. So how are you managing your time and attention, and what part of it goes to Reyna Gold specifically?
Yeah, sure. I mean, and the way we've set up, we've got multiple exploration targets, right? So, they're in different companies, and exploration is a situation where once you have kind of a footprint in a location, you can explore multiple targets. So yeah, we set up Reyna Silver first, and then we worked with Peter, Dr. McGaw, and really he was the one that said to us that we should do a gold exploration, also focus on Mexico, the potential of gold exploration. Peter's view and a lot of the geologists is vast in northwestern Mexico. So we set up Reyna Gold, and I'm the CEO of Reyna Gold, the CFO of Reyna Silver. And I like to work. I'm still young. I enjoy what I do. We have great teams. I think, everything you do, it's important that you have a good team. Generally success is a team orientated thing. So we have good geologists. We have good people around us. And as a consequence, we're quite comfortable with the workload across multiple companies.
What does that mean in terms of time? Half, 1/3? What part of your attention goes to Reyna Gold?
The majority of my attention goes to Reyna Gold. I'm the CEO, and I want to stay successful. So, a lot of dialogue with the geological team across the week. I talk to investors as much as I can, and that's I'm in the hot seat, and it's not been going well the last 12 months. So I want to see it reverse, change course, and move forward. But what I am comfortable is that geologically we're doing what we want to do. We've had the access to the capital. We're doing what we want to do, and now we just need to get back to a point where we get the share price to do what we want to do, and then we'll be in great shape. I think the long-term history of the company is only kind of reflected on when we raise capital. So if we can raise capital back at 30 or 40 cents, then these days a 5 or 10 cent stock will be part of the history. It won't have had a long-term impact on the share count and the potential upside. So that's kind of what we focus on now, Antonio, over the next 2 or 3 months. Really delivering on this drill program, and then getting the results out to investors, and hopefully create more excitement in the share price, and then they have the access to capital that we want for 2024.
How do you do that, though? I mean, the market doesn't seem to give too much about any results or plans that you're making here. I mean, on the day of announcing your last news release was the 27th of July, so about 3 or 4 days ago. Almost 1 million shares traded, and your stock fell. Even though the results were not disappointing.
1.8 million shares traded on that day, Antonio. And our share price went down. It's unfortunately the market we have, and I think you see it across a lot of companies that when they know there's going to be liquidity, some shareholders. And I was looking through the log at the end of the day. Somebody sold 500,000 shares in one go. There were multiple big dumps into the market. So unfortunately, you get a few people throwing in the towel and deciding to move their capital elsewhere. So it's not easy, Antonio. It's not easy, and I think a lot of you talk to the people that have been successful in this industry. And it's a lot about resilience and persistence. It's not overnight success. It takes years to make mineral discoveries. So, we're on a journey about 1.5 years in. Like touched on at the beginning, hopefully a 3 or 5 year journey to a major discovery. So this has definitely been a more difficult point from the share price and the capital market perspective. But we're getting to the point where now we need to go back to the capital market. And that's kind of what matters. This this period of the last 12 months has not been good, but we haven't had to dilute, which is good in the long term kind of trajectory of the company.
Well, I guess you're sort of at the mercy of Mother I don't know if it's politically correct to call her Mother Nature these days, but I'll just call her Mother Nature because that's how I grew up. But so you're at the mercy of Mother Nature here. I mean, what can you do? I mean, you could do reasonable promotion. You don't want to be out there pumping your stock into unrealistic levels either. You don't want to spend too much money in marketing either. It's basically, drill it, and explorers live or die by the drill bit. So I guess you're doing what you can do. You're drilling and you're executing. You have your money for now.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to see where this goes. Yeah. I think I'm getting a good idea of where this headed. You've done a good job explaining. So thank you. Thank you, Michael. Is there anything that you came here hoping to talk about that I'm forgetting to bring up?
No, that's been great, Antonio. Very, very detailed, and no, great chatting. And thank you very much for taking the time. And we're very excited geologically. We think we're quite unique on the scale of our property and the different systems that we're finding. We definitely are finding multiple mineral systems, which is rare. Like we touched on at the start, it will generally be one system. It might be spread out a little bit, but we're definitely finding different mineral systems on one property, which is rare and has great potential. So yeah, very excited. And thanks for your time and getting out to your network. And hopefully we can do this again soon.
Pleasure has been all mine. I will put up your contact information on the screen right now. So if anybody wants to contact you, I assume you answer emails because you answered my email, and that doesn't happen too often. CEOs don't necessarily enjoy being grilled. So yeah, thank you. Thank you as well for doing this.
Thanks, Antonio.